action whatever in the matter, which resolve Yuan Shikai strongly supported. I was still working each day translating the various newspaper reports and telegrams relating to the war, and one morning, seeing a paragraph to the effect that Kang Yuwei, leader of the reform movement in China in 1898, had arrived at Singapore from Batavia, I thought it might interest Her Majesty, and so translated it along with the rest. Her Majesty immediately became very much excited, which made me feel frightened, as I did not know what could be the matter. However, she explained to me that this man had caused all kinds of trouble in China, that before meeting Kang Yuwei, the Emperor had been a zealous adherent to the traditions of his ancestors, but since then had plainly showed his desire to introduce reforms and even Christianity into the country. On one occasion, continued Her Majesty, he caused the Emperor to issue instructions for the Summer Palace to be surrounded by soldiers, so as to keep me prisoner until these reforms could be put into effect. But through the faithfulness of Yong Lu, a member of the Grand Council, and Yuan Shikai, Viceroy of Zhili, I was able to frustrate the plot. I immediately proceeded to the Forbidden City, where the Emperor was then staying, and after discussing the question with him, he replied that he realized his mistake and asked me to take over the reins of government and act in his stead. The result of this was, of course, the Edict of 1898 appointing the Empress Dowager as Regent of China. Her Majesty had immediately ordered the capture of Kang Yuwei and his followers, but he had managed to effect his escape, and she had heard nothing further about him until I translated this report in the newspaper. She seemed relieved, however, to know where he was, and seemed anxious to hear what he was doing. She suddenly became very angry again, and asked why it was that the foreign governments offered protection to Chinese political agitators and criminals. Why couldn't they leave China to deal with her own subjects and mind their own business a little more? She gave me instructions to keep a lookout for any further news of this gentleman and report to her immediately, but I made up my mind that in any case I would not mention anything about him again, and so the matter gradually died away. During one of our visits to the Sea Palace, Her Majesty drew attention to a large piece of vacant ground, and said that it had formerly been the site of the Audience Hall, which had been destroyed by fire during the Boxer trouble. Her Majesty explained that this had been purely an accident and was not deliberately destroyed by the foreign troops. She said that it had long been an eyesore to her as it was so ugly, and that she had now determined to build another Audience Hall on the same site, as the present Audience Hall was too small to accommodate the foreign guests when they paid their respects at New Year. She therefore commanded the Board of Works to prepare a model of the new building in accordance with her own ideas, and submit it for her approval. Up to that time all the buildings in the Palace grounds were typically Chinese, but this new Audience Hall was to be more or less on the foreign plan, and up to date in every respect. This model was accordingly prepared and submitted to Her Majesty. It was only a small wooden model, but was complete in every detail, even to the pattern of the windows and the carving on the ceilings and panels. However, I never knew anything to quite come up to Her Majesty's ideas, and this was no exception. She criticized the model from every standpoint, ordering this room to be enlarged and that room to be made smaller, this window to be moved to another place, etc., etc. So the model went back for reconstruction. When it was again brought for Her Majesty's inspection, everybody agreed that it was an improvement on the first one, and even Her Majesty expressed great satisfaction. The next thing was to find a name for the new building, and after serious and mature consideration it was decided to name it Haiyan Tang, Sea Coast Audience Hall. Building operations were commenced immediately, and Her Majesty took great interest in the progress of the work. It had already been decided that this Audience Hall was to be furnished throughout in foreign style, with the exception of the throne, which of course retained its Manchu appearance. Her Majesty compared the different styles of furniture with the catalogues we had brought with us from France, and finally decided on the Louis XV style, but everything was to be covered with imperial yellow, with curtains and carpets to match. When everything had been selected to Her Majesty's satisfaction, my mother asked permission to defray the expense herself and make a present of this furniture. This Her Majesty agreed to, and the order was accordingly placed with a well-known Paris firm from whom we had purchased furniture when in France. By the time the building was completed, the furniture had arrived, and it was quickly installed. Her Majesty went to inspect it, and of course had to find fault as usual. She didn't seem at all pleased with the result of the experiment, and said that after all a Chinese building would have been the best, as it would have had a more dignified appearance. However, the thing was finished, and it was no use finding fault now, as it could not be changed. During the summer months I had plenty of leisure time and devoted about an hour each day to helping the Emperor with his English. He was a most intelligent man with a wonderful memory, and learned very quickly. His pronunciation, however, was not good. In a very short time he was able to read short stories out of an ordinary school reader, and could write from dictation fairly well. His handwriting was exceptionally fine, while in copying Old English and ornamental characters he was an expert. Her Majesty seemed pleased that the Emperor had taken up this study, and said she thought of taking it up herself, as she was quite sure she would learn it very quickly if she tried. After 2 lessons she lost patience and did not mention the matter again. Of course, these lessons gave me plenty of opportunity to talk with His Majesty, and on one occasion he ventured to remark that I didn't seem to have made much progress with Her Majesty in the matter of reform. I told him that many things had been accomplished since my arrival at Court, and mentioned the new Audience Hall as an instance. He didn't appear to think that anything worth talking about, and advised me to give up the matter altogether. He said when the proper time arrived, if it ever did arrive, then I might be of use, but expressed great doubts on the subject. He also inquired about my father, and I told him that unless his health improved very soon it would be necessary for us to leave the Court for a while at any rate. He replied that although he should very much regret such a necessity, he really believed that it would be for the best. He said he felt certain that I should never be able to settle down permanently to Court life, after spending so many years abroad, and for his part would put no obstacles in the way of my leaving the Court if I desired to do so. Her Majesty had given me permission to visit my father twice every month, and everything appeared to be going along nicely, until one day one of Her Majesty's servant girls told me that Her Majesty was trying to arrange another marriage for me. At first I did not take any notice of this, but shortly afterwards Her Majesty informed me that everything was arranged, and that I was to be married to a certain prince whom she had chosen. I could see that Her Majesty was waiting for me to say something, so I told her that I was very much worried at that time about my father, and begged her to allow the matter to stand over for the time being at any rate. This made Her Majesty very angry, and she told me that she considered me very ungrateful after all she had done for me. I didn't reply, and as Her Majesty did not say anything more at the time, I tried to forget about it. However, on my next visit home I told my father all about it, and as before he was strongly opposed to such a marriage. He suggested that on my return to the Palace I should lay the whole matter before Li Lien Ying,